Okay, folks, what we have here are the Civil War Highlights, Section 2. This is set up just like Section 1. So, take your time, take good notes, watch any videos that are attached, and put everything in your notes that I go over. Again, if you find something that's incredibly interesting, I sent you in messages around a week or two ago a great resource where you can go ahead and find out a lot more about something that I mentioned that you may be interested in. It is in your messages. It's from the American Civil War Trust, a great, reliable Civil War website. All right, so here are the Civil War highlights. And again, I don't like to do it this way, but we have to fit this stuff in before the end of the year, and it's coming quick. All right, so continue your notes. This is Section 2. There'll be a 15-question quiz for 45 points at the end. Take your time. So, we have the North and the South. The Battle of Manassas, otherwise known as Bull Run, got it started. The Southerners surprised the heck out of the Northerners. If you read through Section 1 and took notes on Section 1, you know where you're at. All right. It's now September of 1862. General Lee, who President Lincoln originally wanted to run the U.S. Army for the North, is now the main general in charge of the Army of the South, known as the Army of Northern Virginia, the Confederacy, the South. So what he does is he gathers thousands of his men, multiple tertiary generals, those are kind of the secondary generals, and marches towards the capital of the United States, which of course is Washington, D.C. So they're trying to attack Washington, D.C. Now, what ends up happening next is kind of interesting, and this is historically accurate. General McClellan, the general for the Northern Army, the Union Army, the United States Army, two men found in the road a rolled up package of cigars. And when they unrolled the package of cigars, inside they found the Southern battle plans on how they were going to attack Washington, D.C. No one really knows how it ended up there. Some people speculated that it was planted there on purpose so that the North could find it. I'm going to go with it was probably being delivered and someone may have dropped it. Regardless, the North finds hidden battle plans. Sweet! If you know what your enemy's doing next, boy, that'll be easy. Well, McClellan sort of blows it. And he sort of waits too long to go ahead and head them off. But when he finally does, he gets to a place called Antietam, Maryland. Antietam, Maryland. Guys, girls, it is not far from here at all. It's only about a 3-hour drive, just south of another important battle place called Gettysburg. So, General McClellan meets up and faces General Lee's men at this small farming town called Antietam. And they battled for one day. And guys, girls, this will go down as the bloodiest day in American history. Over 23,000 dead. Now, what you see here, these are just a few pictures, guys, girls, that I included. This is what the Antietam battlefield would look like. All right, a lot of the times you just found a big wide open field and went at it. Now, the strange looking fences, of course, are for the working farm. And this farm is still producing today, even though it's a historical landmark. The road that you see here is called the Sunken Road. After the Battle of Antietam, there were so many dead bodies that they stayed on the field for months. Finally, the people of Antietam came and started to finally bury the decaying bodies of 23,000 soldiers. What they did was they just kind of moved them into this road, covered them with lime, covered them with dirt, and buried them there. I mean, so many times, guys, girls, thousands of men, boys, and even in some cases women who disguised themselves as guys to fight in the American Civil War would die in a far-off area and no one knew whatever happened to them. They were buried in unmarked graves. That's one of the reasons why the government made these places historical landmarks. Let's move on. So another shot of Antietam here, and again, it's just a basic working farm. This just happened to be the place where the two armies met and went at it. Again, 23,000 dead in one day. Just some pictures here to show you that Antietam was just a basic place. This picture was taken in September of 1862, probably before the Battle of Antietam, because a lot of these bridges were destroyed. A lot of these homes were destroyed. And of course, this is a reenactment. I just want to be able to show you what it looked like to fire a cannon. Not much different from the Revolution here. The cannons were a little bit better and a little bit bigger, but they still fired the same way. All right, so for your notes, make sure that you know that the Battle of Antietam in Maryland, the North versus the South. South was trying to attack Washington, D.C. General McClellan from the North cuts off General Lee, and they meet here. And they go at it for one full day. 23,000 dead. And of course, back in the day, there was an Antietam Battleground 5 for the PlayStation 1, I believe it was. The game was, for its time, it was pretty good. Today, you would laugh at it. All right, now, Antietam was one of the most highly photographed post-battle areas. That means after the battle. And again, taking photos back then was not an easy thing. You'd have a cameraman with a big boxy camera, like I told you before, and it would take a while to set up. And you could see that these are some dead soldiers at Antietam. Now, I'm showing you these pictures not to gross you out. These are some of the dead, decomposed bodies that I was telling you that they buried in the sunken road. They covered them with lime, which helps decompose the body quicker, and then covered them with dirt. Confederates and Union soldiers were buried most of the time just right next to each other, all right? Right next to each other. Again, here's one of the most highly photographed death scenes of Antietam. This is the one that made it into the newspapers. And back then, people that read the newspapers never actually saw what war was like. I mean, you had some veterans that did, of course, from maybe the War of 1812, if they were still around at this point. But this was published in newspapers, and people were shocked all across the North and the South. They were absolutely shocked. Oh my gosh, this is just terrible. This war needs to end. This war needs to end. Because everybody that's dying was an American. You just picked a side, the North or the South. So you had brothers killing brothers and uncles killing cousins and things like that. Terrible war. Again, here's another famous photograph. This was printed in a lot of local newspapers and whatnot, showing people for the very first time what war actually looks like. Because guys, girls, before this, before the camera, you know, they heard that war was bad, but they never saw it. They never saw the end result of a battle. And this really opened people's eyes and made people want to end the war. All right, here we go. Now, General Lee, the leader for the South, who originally was supposed to lead the North and told President Lincoln, sorry, I have to fight for Virginia, I am a Virginian. General Lee withdraws. After the Battle of Antietam, he goes back south. He knows he's not going to be able to attack Washington, D.C. His troops were decimated. Now, George McClellan, General of the North, makes a mistake right here. You could probably figure out what the mistake is. He does not follow the South. Honestly, the North had more people, and if they would have followed the South and tracked them down, they may have been able to end this war earlier. But McClellan sort of screws up and does not chase General Lee and the Confederates. Because of this mistake, President Lincoln is going to call on his next general. His name is Ambrose Burnside. Now, you've heard of facial hair called sideburns before. This is the man who gave us that term. Because, well, here, I'll just show you. Yeah, that's Ambrose Burnside. Check out those sideburns, all right? He kind of has a continuous loop around his head of follicles. Just funny that he has all this facial hair, but not so much on top. And the man has a giant, giant forehead. He's the man in charge of the North now. He takes McClellan's place. And honestly, I'll just get right to the point. He's not going to be very good either. Here's a good higher order thinking question. Why did most of the generals that Lincoln put in charge of the U.S. Army, why were they so terrible? Well, if you know the answer to this, I'm going to give it to you. The answer to this is most of the good generals went to schools in the South, military schools in the South, and were from the South. So they fought for the South. That's why. So we were left with what I always call third string, fourth string, fifth string, eighth string generals. Kind of like NFL teams have second, third, fourth string quarterbacks just in case. That's how we started off here in the North, with kind of crappy generals. All right, here we go. Let me explain this. So it's December in the year is 1862. The Southerners are trying to get Washington, D.C., and the Northerners are trying to attack the Southern capital. Now, I told you before that Richmond, Virginia was the capital of the Confederacy. So the North tries to organize a plan to take out Richmond, Virginia. Again, but, and it's a big giant but, the Northern Army, the Union Army, marches towards Richmond but gets jammed up in a place called Fredericksburg, Virginia, right along a river. And the Confederates hold them steady. The Union, of course, lays into the Confederates, and this is going to be the Battle of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Now, the Confederates, of course, knew the ground, so whenever the North started to pound them with artillery, most of the Confederates, the Southerners, went up a hill so that they were sort of out of reach. Now, once they got to the hill, that's when they pulled out the higher artillery, the bigger artillery, and they started firing cannons down where the Americans were, and they really laid into them with cannon fire. This goes down as a Confederate win. The South wins the Battle of Fredericksburg. And for your notes, again, I've said it like 4 or 5 times, this is the Battle of Fredericksburg, and of course that is in Virginia. So, the Union was very surprised at the staying power of the South and how much they could actually inflict, decimation on the Northern Union Army. All right, this is the hill. This is the hill in Fredericksburg that the Confederates went up. You can see that there's a little bit of a wall for protection. They dug a ditch so that their body was down and their head was not above the wall, and they were able to take shots at the Americans. A lot of the heavy artillery was further down the ridge. All right, again, here's Fredericksburg. You can see in the background a couple churches sticking up. It was a decent-sized town for the 1860s. Battle of Fredericksburg. Now, a lot of the battle was fought on the outskirts, and this photograph was taken of someone's home. Now, this person was obviously a little well off, probably a planter, and probably owned slaves. You can see people standing on the porch. It's very difficult to see unless you zoom in, and then it gets a little fuzzy. But you can see that there are holes all through the front of this house from the artillery launched by both sides. And here is Fredericksburg. Yes, there used to be a bridge right across that was blown up during the battle. This is the Battle of Fredericksburg. Now you can see a little bit better in these homes how much damage was inflicted on everyday citizens' houses. They fought in the streets. They fought in the town too. A lot of these battles, guys, girls, like Gettysburg coming up, they're going to be fighting right in town and in people's front and backyards. All right, so here we go. You have General Lee from the south on the left, and then you have General Burnside leading the Union Army from the north. Lee's army, the Confederates, were officially called the Army of Northern Virginia. General Burnside, the Union Army, also known as the Army of the Potomac. All right, the next battle that you need to be sort of aware of, it was called Chancellorsville. General Lee and General Thomas Jackson, Stonewall Jackson, that I talked about during the first battle of Bull Run and Manassas, are able to sort of combine their troops and defeat the North again. So the Northerners lose the Battle of Chancellorsville. Now, if you look here, the two men standing on top, the guy on the left, the man on the left, right here, right in front of you, is one of the leading generals at this point. We believe that that is probably General. Yes. So that's him. That's an actual photograph. And these men right here were about to fight. And you can see that there are white guys, there's African Americans. This is a picture of them getting ready to go and fight. All right, now here's something interesting, and I'm just going to get right to this. I was on my way to Myrtle Beach one time when I was a lot younger, and my friends and I saw a sign that said, Arm of Stonewall Jackson, a few miles ahead. Well, us being the history nerds that we were, because we were all college students, we decided, hey, let's go check this out, because we kind of knew about the story. And we went and found it, and this is all it is. Turns out, here's the story. General Jackson lost his arm in battle, and they buried his arm. Just a day or two later, after the next big battle, General Stonewall Jackson goes out for an evening stroll, smoking a cigar. He comes back when it's incredibly dark. General Jackson didn't have the best hearing in the world because he was constantly surrounded by heavy artillery. Well, because of his deafness, he couldn't hear the Confederate soldiers who saw him coming, telling him to identify himself. They yelled it a few times, identify yourself or we will shoot. Well, he didn't hear him, and they shot and killed their own general. Imagine how dumb they felt when they were done. So his arm is buried in one part of the South. His body is buried in a different part of the South. Oh, by the way, he attended the funeral of his own arm. Okay, in the North, President Lincoln's going to switch it up again, and we're going to put in the next general. This guy's going to get it done. His name is Ulysses S. Grant, future President Grant. He's going to lead the North to victory. Now, he moves his men to a place called Shiloh, Tennessee. Again, a small southern town. And he told his men, whatever happens, absolutely do not retreat. We are fighting till the end here. And over 65,000 people were killed at the Battle of Shiloh, Tennessee in under 4 days. That's a lot of people. It didn't top Antietam. Remember, Antietam was 1 day. That was 23,000 dead in 1 day. This is over 65,000 dead in 4 days, 5 days, give or take. And just to show you on the map, the Shiloh, the Battle of Shiloh, you have Grant coming from the north. You have Johnston, General Johnston, from the Confederates coming up from the south. And if you look to the left, that big squiggly blue line is the Mississippi River. All right, here's what the Battle of Shiloh looked like a couple of years after the battle. You can see a monument straight here in the middle, and that's all that is there. If you go to these battlefields today, guys, girls, especially Gettysburg, you will see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of memorials to different groups that fought at Gettysburg. All right. General Ulysses S. Grant, victorious, he has his men continue south. They go to Memphis, Tennessee, and capture Memphis. And then they move south to New Orleans. That's the outlet of the Mississippi River. That's the mouth of the Mississippi River. And they take New Orleans. So guys, girls, they're cutting off the Mississippi River, which is the main mode of transportation for the South at this point. It's getting close to being ending. All right, President Lincoln. The man to his left is Ulysses S. Grant, future President Grant. And you can see he has his arm in his coat. Yes, that is really President Lincoln. And as far as we know, this is the top hat that is in the Smithsonian Institute today. All right, soldier life. Just a little bit about being a soldier during the Civil War. Eventually, everybody fought. At first, it was just men. Some women who wanted to fight weren't allowed. So they cut their hair, grew out their beards, and talked a little bit like this, so that they passed themselves off as men. All right, but here's what you need to understand. There were a lot of soldiers on both sides, especially the South, who were kids. I mean, the youngest kid to fight in the Civil War that we have a record of is 4 years old. Four. All right, disease, terrible, absolutely terrible. Dysentery, diarrhea, smallpox was still around. Disease, again, is going to kill a lot of these men when they're camped out. Now, in 1863, President Lincoln said, okay, we need some more men, so here we go. If you're between 20 and 45, I wouldn't be able to do this because I'm 46 this year. I am 46. So I'd be too old for this, which is fine. They held a draft, which is like a lottery. You get your number called, you have to go and fight or else you'll be arrested. Now, they gave a little sweetener here. If you wanted to avoid the draft, you could simply pay the United States government $300 as long as you find a replacement and you would not have to go. All right, here's one of the only pictures ever taken of a battle about to begin. You can see the men loading the cannons in the middle. This photographer, I'm not going to lie, had some serious guts because the battle was about to start. He had his big, heavy, bulky equipment right next to the Union soldiers that you see here, and the battle had to have started just a few seconds after. All right, hospitals. People's backyards became infirmaries and hospitals. And surgeons set up in tents or in some cases on the dining room or kitchen tables of some regular citizens. Gettysburg is one of the ones that I think of. Every one of these men here is alive, barely, and are awaiting amputation. Back then, because of the invention called the mini ball, which was a lead cone-shaped bullet. Let me see.